Rodents, what you really need to know. These aren't the cute little Mickeys and Ratatouilles. These are disease carrying, product destroying, and audit failing pests. The question is, what can you and your staff do about it? Shell will show you the high impact actions you can take to prevent rodents. We will also cover the control devices you may see around your facility, how they work, and how you can help them work better. Today's guest speaker is Shell Hartzer. She is the consulting entomologist at 360 Pest and Food Safety Consulting and has been working with pest management industry for over a decade. She helps companies in food, healthcare, and hospitality, other industries to solve tough pest problems, evaluate their current pest programs, and put preventative plans in place to work better with their pest control teams. Shell holds a Bachelor of Science in Entomology with a wildlife conservation concentration from the University of Delaware and a Master of Science in Entomology from Kansas State University, as well as being a board certified entomologist in urban and structural entomology. She is also a preventive controls qualified individual and has earned her Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. As I mentioned, we will have time for questions at the end. And now I will hand it over to you, Shell.
Awesome. I'm totally going to change my bio. It's way too long. I'm just going to say, Shell Hartzer, I play with bugs. I think that's way better. I play with bugs. But I play with rats and mice and all kinds of pests too. So when Pam asked me to talk about rodents, I got all excited because I'm a geek like that. And I'm like, oh yes, I love talking about rodents because they really are fascinating when you think of them, and they're destructive and diseasey and gross all at the same time. So let's get into this. And like Pam said, please use that Q&A function, the chat function to chat in. I'll try and keep an eye on that, but I get rolling and I see my screen. So Pam can yell at me if she needs to. So rodents, okay? They are a problem pretty much everywhere. We have our 3 commensal species of rodents, and that's going to be the 2 rats, Norway rat and roof rat, and the mice. And we have to realize that they're there and what they do. Now, I can sit here and tell you all about the house mouse and how many pups it has per brood and how long it lives, but really what you need to know is that they're small. They're very sneaky. I mean, they will hide in some of the tiniest areas that you would never think they're in. And of course, they're damaging. I mean, you have food products and they want food. So you're providing them with lunch. It's great. And what goes in must come out, which is a contaminant, and they have a really fast reproductive rate. And really, this is the same for rats and mice. We're just dealing with something larger and something smaller. But as we go through this, you folks don't have roof rats, which is so nice. That avoids one problem, but you still have the Norway rats and the roof rats. And when you think about this and their reproductive rate, this is actual video. This isn't somebody like taking, a little 10-gallon tank and, videotaping a whole bunch of rodents. This is Australia. And Australia, about every couple years, has this massive influx, this massive development of mice. Okay, it's due to the weather, it's due to the food availability. And this happened a couple years ago. So shows you how bad this problem can get. And you're seeing a whole bunch of grain here. That grain is useless now, except for probably animal feed, because it's so infested. The mice are eating it. The mice are pooping on it. They're peeing on it. They've got all this stuff. The hawks and the owls are probably loving this, but none of the rest of us are. So remember, as you go through this, you seeing one mouse, and you notice that most of this is in the dark. Most of this is at night. These things are nocturnal, so they want to hide. They don't want to be out in the open while you're there. So these are rats. And again, look how fast they're moving. So these things are very sneaky. And look, I mean, you can't even see them until they poke their little heads out there. And then they're like, ooh, food. Okay, I'm going to get it real quick. And then I'm going to go back to my hiding spot. So you just looking around going, oh, I'm sure I'll see a rat or a mouse if it's in my facility. And this is why we have a whole bunch of devices around. And this is a little weird because, I mean, it's obviously daytime. It's probably, sun up or sun down. It's not super bright. But there's a food source, so they're going to go for it. And you kind of notice that it's up against the edge too. You can see that the edge of that dock, and it's going to kind of run back along that edge and into its little hidey hole. They like edges because pretty much everything out there that's bigger than them can eat them. So they are prey for just about everything. And that makes them sneaky. They don't want to be out in the open because anything is going to eat them. Think of your facilities and think of how big they are and how many places these little things can hide. And all the time they're doing that, they're reproducing. Yay. Okay, so we've got mice, we've got rats, they're out there, okay? We can't eliminate them all. We've tried for thousands of years. Not going to get rid of them, but we can continue to battle them. So the first thing to remember is that we do have tools to deal with these things, okay? We have some tools, and a lot of the tools that we have are very effective. So the first thing that, of course, that we have is traps. Now, you see that little rat? Now, I would not have set the trap here because the trap's kind of out in the open. I would have set it up against that edge, up against that desk. But you see that little mouse go in there. And he's like, oh, is that a cookie? Okay, maybe. But is it a chocolate chip cookie? Because otherwise, I'm out of here. I don't know that that's really worth it. But let me take another sniff at that thing. And, maybe it's worth it. Is it chocolate? Oh, it's chocolate chip. I got to get that sucker. Oh, look at that. Look at how fast. We'll do this again. Look at how fast that sucker got out of there. He or she set that trap off and still managed to get out before that trap went off. So do traps work? Sure. But we also have to remember that mice like to avoid traps. Okay, we've got a couple traps, and I like that placement a little bit better because it's up against the edge, so they feel safe up against the edge there. So I like the trap placement, but you'll see these little mice. Oh, look, and see, that one's not even on the floor. Oh my gosh, it should be on the floor, right? Mice don't climb. Oh yeah, they do. This is what makes management difficult because they're going to see that little trap and they're like, it's just got peanut butter on it. I'm not in the mood for peanut butter. And they get smart. That rat in the first one that set off that trap, that rat has now learned that thing is evil and it won't go near it. So it's called being trap shy. They've realized that that's dangerous and they won't go near it. So sometimes we have to employ a lot of different activities there. So you can kind of see this again, they're fast, they're going to be up, they're going to be down, and sometimes they literally will avoid those traps. They'll kind of sniff it and be like, no, not going there. We also have rats that are considered neophobic. Rats are considered afraid of new things. So if we just put those traps down today and we had a rat problem, those rats are going to be like, nope, that's new. I can't go near it. It takes them a while to get used to it and actually go to it. Mice are usually easier. They're kind of like, ooh, something new. Let's go check it out. In this case, again, though, we see that it's just going to avoid it. It's not interested. Maybe they're not set in the right place, but all good. So we've got, all right, come on, let me get my mouse back. So we've got traps that work, right? Traps do work, okay? But the trap is only as good as the people using it, okay? It's not the tool, it's how you use the tool. And if we put them in the right places at the right times with the right bait, if we can trap them, but we're never going to trap all of them. And so this is a kind of a standard, we call them tin cat traps. And oh, wait, what happened there? Let's do that again. Okay, standard tin cat, you'll probably see these by doors, around the inside of your facilities. And oh my gosh, that's not supposed to happen. What's going on here? So there's a little teeter-totter mechanism, and this mouse has learned in just a couple hours that it can pull that mechanism down and go back out the hole, went back in. Rodents are smart. It doesn't mean these things don't work though. Okay, they do work. They just have to be checked often. And we have to realize that mice can get out of these things, that rats can evade them, and use that to make sure that we direct them into the trap, make sure we attract them to those traps, and check the traps often so stuff like this doesn't happen. You don't see the first like 2 hours of this, of the mouse kind of doing it, but look at that. It's just like, yep, cool, I'm out. What's next? So you will see a lot of these, you will probably see a lot of these around the interior of your facility. Again, often called tin cats because they're this metal trap, and somebody thought calling it a cat was cool because cats eat mice, which is also kind of a myth, but we won't go there. So you see that opening on the side, that square hole. If you look, that square hole is tucked right up against that floor wall junction. Because what did I say about those rats when they are out there? See how it's following the edge? Because everything out in the middle, big, open, scary predators. So they're going to want to be up there against that. And so putting those holes, making sure that trap is flush up against that wall, means that as those rats, as the mice are running down, they're going to go right into that hole because it's right there. It's right in their pathway. Okay, so when you see these, and I guarantee every facility I've ever gone to has one of these out of place. I mean, it happens. People sweep the floor, it gets kicked to the side, a forklift driver aims for them sometimes. Just put them back. You know, put them back, make sure that hole is up against the side and they're flush up. Otherwise, that rodent is running behind it, that rodent is running over it, around it, whatever it is. And now you have a rodent, probably a mouse, that's deeper into your facility. And the way these work, I told you about that teeter-totter mechanism. So most of them, they're on the top of the trap, but you can see that little, teeter-totter that happens there. So when it goes in, it pushes it down so the mice falls into the box. And when it goes up, it basically like closes off that hole. So the mouse is not supposed to get out. But we saw what happened in that video. So this is a great one because it's got the clear lid so you can see what's in there. A lot of people will put glue boards in these to make sure the mouse stays trapped and to see what kind of insects are there. So from your point of view, whether you have that internal team that's doing your pest control or whether you hire out and you have an external company doing it, these are going to be there. Make sure they stay there. Make sure that you're kicking it back up against the wall when you see them moved. Because if it's not, you don't have a rodent control program that's working. That device isn't working at all because the mouse isn't going to go in it. So you have to make sure that they're up against the wall because, your pest control team or your pest control company that you're using, probably there once a week, maybe every 2 weeks. That's a long time for a device to not be working. And if you ever see these crushed or kind of mangled or looks like they're obviously not working, make sure you tell them, because again, if that trap is not working, the mice can keep going right by it. And that means they can go deeper into your facility, they can breed, and we see what happens once they start breeding. It's just, boom, it happens. So these are mostly internal. You'll see them outside every once in a while, but really they're designed to be an internal trapping device. A lot of times you'll see them on either side of every door. Why do we do that? Well, where's a mouse going to get in? It's not going to get in through a solid concrete wall. It's going to get in through the broken door seal that's underneath there. So think about where these are placed, especially if you're doing your own pest control. Otherwise, your pest control company has thought about where to put these. They're putting them at potential entry points, and they're there to stop that from getting further into your facility. Now, I keep saying mice with this one. There is a reason for that. You look at those holes. Sure, a rat potentially could get into that, but let's be real. The rat is bigger than that trap in most cases. So these are really designed for mice, which, I mean, you folks have, house mice up there, you've got deer mice, you got field mice, which actually aren't a mouse, they're actually a vole, but great for them. If your problem is rats, though, you have to use something bigger. And so we have a number of snap traps. These work perfectly fine on mice too. So, if you have that mouse problem that, you saw that one that kind of ran along the lines, you can get these up higher to where they're running. But especially for rats, that tin cat style trap is not going to work. So you need snap traps, something like this. And there's a number of different styles out there. You know, you can see these two, the typical wood one that you see all the time. The other one we often call Jaws because it looks like a big thing of Jaws. And these are cool because you can kind of see that, especially on the Jaws trap, there's a little space here right in the trigger to put a little bit of food bait. And that helps draw those rodents in just a little bit better. I mean, if this is just sitting there, it's just sitting there, you know, and if it's not in the pathway where they're running, it's just sitting there. So if you can put a little bit of food bait on it and entice them in just a little bit, like the warm chocolate chip cookie that smells so good, you can get them to put their little heads in there a little bit faster, a little bit more often. Now, the great thing about these tin cat style traps is that these are multi-catch. So you can catch a number of mice in these, you know, and they're going to probably die in there depending on how often you check them. But, you know, you can catch multiple ones. For snap traps, the minute they go off, they're useless now until somebody checks them, removes the rodent, and resets them. So benefits and drawbacks to both of these. I tend to prefer snap traps in a lot of cases just because they're easy to move around. They're easy to get in hard to reach places. And especially with rats, you've got to use some kind of snap trap as it comes to that. So those are some of the devices. And again, these things are smart. These devices aren't perfect. We've seen how fast they are. We've seen them evade these traps. We've seen them get into all these different places. And getting traps to those places sometimes is difficult. Getting them in their pathway can be difficult. So there's a lot of challenges to rodent control. But if you remember to tuck those traps up against the wall, make sure the holes are in the right place. Even the snap traps, you saw in that one video how I said, okay, this is pretty good placement because they're up against that floor wall junction where they're likely to run, where they're likely to be. That puts it in their pathway. It just makes them more effective. When you have a trap that's sitting out, like say in the middle of your facility, again, big, open, scary. Over there, a lot more safe because it tucks me up against the wall. So think of where these things are going to be. Think of their behavior of being small, being scared. Where are they going to want to be? Dark areas. You know, facilities sometimes are lit 24/7. There's still shadows. There's still areas that are dark. So you can kind of think about those dark areas and where those might be to help you with some of the rodent control. All right, getting into more fun stuff. So we did the inside traps, and we can have snap traps on the outside too. It happens. A lot of times we'll put them in a bait box, but this is what we're going to deal with on the outside. So on the outside, you may be used to seeing this. You know, you've got a bunch of those stations that are kind of lined up on the outside of your facility. And these are typically bait stations. And so what it's doing, it's controlling the rodent population on the outside. So if we shrink that population a little bit, the chance of something gets in is much lower because there's fewer of them there. So these are intended to keep that population down a little bit and move it a little bit farther away from the facility so we don't have them get in. So those tin cats are perfectly fine and never catch anything. That would be perfect. There are some challenges to these. Now, this is how they work. I kind of showed you that teeter-totter mechanism and the snap traps. You folks know how snap traps work, but if you've ever seen inside one of these bait stations, you can kind of see that the mouse, again, we've got that hole tucked up against the wall, okay? That rodent, that rat is gonna run along that wall because it's safer there. So you want that tucked up against the wall. The rodent runs in, goes, oh, wait, there's something good in here. And we have bait blocks. Sometimes we have soft packs of bait that are in there. Just depends on what you folks have in Canada. You're a little bit more limited on pesticides than we are down here in the States. So we have that. We may have a non-toxic bait in there. A lot of times we'll use non-toxic baits. They look like these blocks too, but they just don't have the active rodenticide in them. And we can see then, is something chewing on this? And then we can switch it out with the toxic baits if we have to. But then you notice that the rat can go right back out. The mouse can go right back out. This is not a trap. There's nothing that contains the rat or the mouse in this structure. It's an open box. But you can see when that lid is closed, what's going to happen is it becomes a nice, safe, dark space up against the wall. So kind of funnels the rodent in and gives them a little snack while they're in there, and then they run out. And then they go back to their little home, and we have fewer rodents out there. So with this, if you ever see these open, these are, if they have rodenticide in them, they are supposed to be locked and secured. Now, this one, I can't see, it doesn't have a block underneath. A lot of times you'll see that patio block underneath. I'm guessing that this one might be anchored down. You just can't see the anchor behind it. But if you go and kind of like kick one of these stations, not like, soccer kick lining up for that goal, but just, a little nudge. If that station moves, it's not secured to the ground. We want it secured for a number of reasons, and really legal reasons, because that's what the labels tell us to do. So I'm guessing that this is anchored behind into the ground, not going to move very much. If you see it open, if you see it unattached to something, if you see bait spilling out of it, call your pest control company immediately, or your pest control team, because that station is not working. You have loose bait, and that can be an issue. We don't want any of that getting inside. And that's why you typically see these on the outside of facilities. Not that we can't use them on the inside, but the fact is we just don't want to take that chance of having toxic bait inside a food facility. Doesn't mean we don't do it every once in a while, but we tend to avoid it. Now, lots of different styles of these traps. You're probably used to some of these bigger ones, these bigger black boxes. And again, the theory is all the same. There's an opening, they go in, they turn, they get their little cookie, they go back out. Okay. We have some smaller ones for mice. We have that kind of rock style if you wanted to blend in with your landscaping. Hopefully you have more of a situation like this where you have that nice vegetation-free border, which also pushes the mice and the rats away from your facility because it's open, it's scary. So we want that nice vegetation-free border. We want our stations where there's going to be activity. We want to make sure that there's fresh bait in them. And we have a number of different styles. Again, these should be either a patio block, weighted, or anchored, because that's what the labels tell us to do. And you can see in a couple of these pictures, like this one right here, we can set traps in them. We can set snap traps in a lot of these. So, you may decide, okay, we don't want to use bait out here, but we still want some protection. So we can have a snap trap in here. Again, that snap trap just has to be checked a little bit more often, because once it goes off, you have to reset it. So these are the bait stations typically on the outside. Now, I mentioned holes, walls, that tin cat trap that was flush up against the wall. I think you can see, hopefully you can see the problem with this one. This one is not placed correctly. Now, did somebody kick it? Did a trash truck, clip the edge of it? Did somebody aim their forklift? Who knows what's going on? But this is out of place, and a rodent is not going to go in there. It's going to go right behind it and follow that wall. So we need to make sure, if you see these out of place, if it's easy to do so and it doesn't look damaged, again, push it back to where it should be. Landscaping crews will come in and sometimes these will get displaced. It happens. We don't have a 100% perfect situation. But when this does happen, and I did actually move it back once I was done taking a picture of it, move it back so that the holes are lined up with the wall. That way the rodent can come through, go in, find its nice little hiding spot for a bit, eat a little bait, and then go back out. Okay, so that's what you should see. And this, because we know traps work perfectly, bait stations should work perfectly too, right? Yeah, okay. So you can see this rat, and you can see that box there right in the middle on the bottom. That's a bait box. And you can see this rat keeps investigating it, keeps going near it. The rat never goes into the trap, into the bait box. And these are probably roof rats. You can see how well that sucker climbed. Even Norway rats can climb pretty well, and definitely the mice. I've seen mice go straight up brick buildings. As long as they can get a little bit of purchase, it's incredible what mice can do. So you can see these things. They're just, they're investigating around. They're sniffing. They're like, oh, there might be some good food. I like chewing on wires. Let's chew on some of those wires. But really doesn't care about that bait box. That one almost got in, on that side. And we've got a number of rats here. It's probably about 3 or 4 rats. I know the video keeps stopping and starting, but I know who took this video, and there are about 3 or 4 rats. And again, you notice that this is night. These things are out at night because it's safer at night. There's less predators. And rodents really do like chewing on wires. That's not a joke. I don't know what it is about wiring, but especially rats love to chew on wiring. So if you have any exposed wiring, that may be a risky area for what they're doing and where they might be. we have to think of those food sources. Obviously, you're in a food facility, so you have food, but there may be some other things that are attracting them. It may be some hot pockets. You folks are up in Canada. It gets a little cold up there during certain times of the year. These things are like us. They're like, I want food, I want warmth. Okay, where's the warm spot? Where are they going to get in and where can they go? Because they're trying to avoid the conditions out there just like we are. Okay, so those are the devices that you're going to see around your facility. There may be something weird out there too that, you know, one or two of you have. If you got questions about it, feel free to contact me. I'll give you all my information at the end. I think Pam's got all my stuff. So, you know, look for these devices. Just make sure they are in the right place. Those holes are lined up by the wall. And that's really going to improve your program because then those devices are working. They're going to be more likely to catch those rodents. Is it perfect? No, we've just seen all the videos that show it's not perfect. Does it work a lot of the time? Yes, absolutely. You know, eventually those rats are going to get used to that box. They're going to go into it. They're going to get the bait and it's going to be effective. It's not going to be effective on everything. And it's kind of weird. I'm actually kind of doing this presentation backwards. Usually we talk about all the stuff that you do, you know, before you get to trapping, you know, exclusion and sanitation being a lot of that. But I wanted to really talk about those devices and make sure you understood how they worked and why they are where they are. Because again, if they can just stay where they should be, your program's going to be more effective. And now that you know, you're probably going to notice this. I go every facility I go into, I guarantee I can find one tin cat that's not in place. It happens. Just put it back there. Okay. And keep an eye on those outside bait stations as well. Those shouldn't be as much of an issue, but again, keep an eye on them. Make sure that you report it if something's wrong with them. So your pest control company can get in there, replace it, and have it work again. All right. So sanitation is a big deal. That's why I kind of have that one highlighted. The problem with sanitation is you folks have food. You're in a food facility. So how can you do perfect sanitation? I mean, there's food. So it's hard. But the point is, and if any of you were on the earlier webinar that we did a few months ago, the point is to kind of limit the amount and limit the access. You will never get rid of all the food. Oh God, I hope you don't get rid of all the food because then you have nothing in your facilities. So, you know, limiting the amount and the access and finding what they're there for. If you're doing canned food, rats are not going to chew through the can to get inside, but they're certainly going for your raw ingredients that are in super sacks and a lot easier to chew through. So think about where those foods might be and those hot spots where they're going to be. Exclusion is also important, but sanitation, we also have to think that outside sanitation. Remember I said outside, open, big, scary predators. Anything like this that has all this clutter. And the funny thing is I don't know if you can see my mouse, but there's a tin cat trap right here and there's a bait station right there. Do you think those are effective? Probably not, because the rats and the mice here have so much habitat. And this was rats. The problem with this particular facility was rats. They had all this clutter here. You can see the trash can here as well. So we had a food source. They're never going to go to that bait station or that tin cat trap because they have everything they need. They've got the food, they've got the shelter. Predators aren't able to get in there as easily. So they're really nice and happy there. If we make this area open, if we clean up that clutter, suddenly that becomes open. It becomes dangerous. They're going to go somewhere else, maybe to that bait station that's nice and safe and secure now. Who knows? Also, overgrown areas. I think I showed this picture last time as well. This is outside my house. When I moved in, this was my side yard, and this stuff was I mean, it took me months to get all of this ripped out. It was ridiculous. But all of this, again, is that nice, safe area. Norway rats like to burrow. So they're going to burrow in these areas and get down underneath there. And you can't even see their burrows through this. Mice, same thing. I've got that nice brick wall there. You know, they're going to get in little cracks and crevices, squeeze behind that. They've got a nice, safe area. So when you have all this overgrown material, again, that's potential rodent habitat. That's why we say that vegetation-free border around the sides, or at least keep it really cut down low, keeps it more open, keeps it dangerous. The rodents go somewhere else. Okay, and there's plenty of food source in here too. I did have some rodent burrows in here as I started to clear it all out. It is cleared out now, but we definitely had some active rodent burrows. And again, this is outside my house. I don't want those rodents in my house. I want them in my neighbor's house. Stay away from my house. And another thing I'll mention is, just the food, whether it's incoming food, whether it's outgoing food, whether it's food in process. This is, obviously a nice clean warehouse in everybody's facility that looks great and everything's neat and pretty and there's no droppage or spillage on the floor. Yeah, it's food. It's a food processing facility. You have food. Limit the amount and the access. And you can see that little cat down in the corner. We'll talk more about cats. So try and keep everything neat. Try and keep everything off the floor. This is why we put stuff on pallets. Well, one of the reasons we put stuff on pallets is to keep it off the floor so you can see underneath, so you can inspect underneath. And again, it makes it a little bit more open. I mean, obviously a pallet on the ground, is still nice and dark and safe under there, but it's a little bit more open, a little bit more hard for the rodents to get to the food. They've got to now climb up the pallet and over the pallet and through the shrink wrap. Makes it harder. So limit the amount and the access that we see there. And trash. Trash is a big one, especially around dumpsters. Dumpsters should be cleaned every once in a while, especially the dumpster pad that they're sitting on, that concrete pad that they're sitting on. How many of you can think of a dumpster that you've seen recently, maybe at your facility, that looks gross? It's got, all that gooey, yucky stuff that's decomposed and slipped out of that dumpster. That's a food source. That's a water source for rodents. So, I have obviously a residential trash can here, but think of where your trash is. You probably have some trash cans outside. Think of where your employees, it's Canada in the winter, almost winter for you guys. You're not spending a lot of time outdoors, but if you have outdoor employee areas, where are the trash bins? How often are they getting emptied? That's one thing a lot of people forget about is, those outside areas, smoking areas where people are going to spend a little bit of time, throw their snacks out, throw their soda cans out, but it's overflowing and it's been there for 2 weeks. And, you've got the soda, you've got the end of the chocolate chip cookie that they didn't finish, plenty of food source. Inside those trash bins, inside that dumpster should be cleaned every once in a while. And the farther away that dumpster can be from your facility, the better. Now, I know this is pretty impossible in some facilities. They're like, this is where the dumpster goes. It's not moving. And there's a personnel door right there. And there's a dock door right there. And, trash dumpster right there. It's going to happen that sometimes you cannot move it. In that case, again, keep it as clean as possible. And there's some really cool cleaning products out there that are designed to break down that gunk. They've got little enzymes in them and little bacteria that break down that gunk, and you can easily flush it away. If you need to, call your dumpster company and say, we need a new dumpster because this one is disgusting. Maybe you can do that. So when we think of this, it is those outside areas. This is where our problem often starts, is that population grows and grows and grows. And pretty soon, just the chance of something getting in, because we've provided it with all this habitat, is higher. So think of sanitation as an outside thing as well as that inside thing. Okay. Then again, if you provide it, it will come. This is a couple years ago, and you can see, they're not just out there going like, oh, I need a little piece of cookie. They're like, screw it. There's a piece of pizza there. It's mine. I'm going after that thing. That's feeding my whole family. That piece of pizza is bigger than that rat. So when we see that, it's kind of ridiculous when we see this, but think about your facility. Think about some of those outside areas. Think about where the food is, because if you provide it, they will get to it. I think the rat did eventually take the pizza down there, and there's a whole bunch of videos on there. Every time I go to New York City, I love going to the subways because I see all kinds of rats and I'm like, oh, there's one, it's running. And you see all the dirty stuff and you know that they've got all that food and shelter there. So skipping off of sanitation, again, we want to look at inside sanitation and outside sanitation. We also have to think about exclusion. Okay, when there's an opening, they will get in. There's warmth, there's good smells, there's food, there's safety. So they want in. So if we find those holes and patch them up, that lessens the chance of something getting in. Now, this particular situation, yeah, would not recommend this. This is just a little, no. And I don't know what technician took off their sweatpants to push it in there. No, just no. When you find these openings, seal them up as well as possible. Using that foam is useless. They will chew right through it. You need something a bit more solid. There's actually a cool product that we have in the US. It's like a caulk, but inside that caulk is little metal bits. So when they try and chew through it, they can't chew through it, or they get stabbed with little metal bits and they're like, no, not going there anymore. Now, on occasion, I will say, in certain occasions, this is okay. This is okay when you have nothing else. You just found that hole. You have nothing else. You're going to do this temporarily while you go get your other tools and fix this hole. Okay. That can be valuable. Otherwise, leave your sweatpants on and just go get something better to seal this up. This is actually a picture that I took. This is residential, but I've seen worse in food facilities. Stuff like this. Okay. These things don't need a whole lot of area to get in. So broken door seals, doors that don't come all the way down to the ground. When you think of it, where are these things going to be? Where is a mouse and a rat going to be? It's usually coming from the ground level. So in that case, we usually do want to look down. We want to look at those doors, and you may need to get down on hands and knees sometimes, but if you can see daylight around those doors, there's the potential for something coming in. Okay. And again, focus a little bit lower, focus on those doors and windows. But I was at a facility one time, we were doing a heat treatment, and it was the middle of the night. So I'm walking around the building just to check things, and I see a couple rats, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. It's Mississippi. They got rats down here. Came around the corner. No joke. They had a hole this big in their wall, and the rats were just pouring out because we were doing a heat treatment. It was getting too hot for them. No joke, this big. And so I told the building manager the next day, I'm like, do you realize that you have a huge hole in the side of your building? He's like, yeah, we're going to fix that sometime. And I'm like, okay, because as soon as that treatment was done, where do you think those rats are going? Right back in. Okay. That's an extreme situation, but areas like this happens. And this, I'm going to send Pam a whole bunch of links to this, because the music on this is absolutely fantastic. Oh, wait, let me start this video from the start. You gotta see the whole thing. So this is a rat. This is a full grown rat. It is a lab rat, so it's nice and fat and pampered and happy. And you can see the nice small hole there, and you can see it's having a little bit of an issue there, but once that head goes in, the rest of the body is just gonna follow. It's gonna follow a little slowly, but that sucker's going in. And you can kind of see around the edges too. You can see how it's gnawed around the edges to make it just big enough for it to fit through that hole. Look at those gnaw marks. And that's a 3/4 inch opening. Okay. So, and again, we've got that looks almost a little bit smaller. Look, he just squeezes his fat little body right through there, because there's something good on the other side. And you can see all the droppings down below there. And there we go. And look at this. He actually, yeah, he's looking at that smaller one. Is like, maybe, but this one's probably gonna be a little. Oh, there he goes. You should hear like a little popping sound when he pops his body through. And there's his food source. Okay, these things can fit through very small openings. That full-grown rat you saw, just a little bit there. Okay, now this is a mouse. Okay, this guy did some work on how small of a hole the mouse could get in, and then of course, like any good scientist, he pulls out his Legos. I mean, why not? And what his point here is, and I may fast forward this just a little bit here, is to see how narrow an opening. You saw those round openings with the rat, but look at that narrow little opening right there. And that mouse was just like, again, it should be like a little popping sound when he goes through. Okay, so think about that. Think of how small that opening is and how small the opening is on the bottom of your door seal. Okay, and that little thing's got some incentive. Again, there's food in there. Just look at it. Did you see how his body like kind of slims down? It's so amazing what they can do. And you saw too that he kind of turned when he went out. Look at that, like turn his body just to get right in. This is amazing. So you don't necessarily have to, we always kind of say, an opening the size 3/4 of an inch. These guys, we usually say 1/2 an inch, which you can see that opening. That might be a little bit smaller than 1/2 an inch there. That little sucker just keeps going. He's like, yep, I got food. We're going out. We're going back to my little house. Oh, we made it a little bit more narrow. Can he get it? Come on. Come on. You can do it. You can do it. He's like, I'm going to eat some more food and get fatter. So every time he goes in there, if you can see that little Lego set, does a little click, so he can, look at that. As long as that skull can fit. Look how small. That's amazing. And again, I'm going to send you the links for all this, because we're not going to, I'd love to sit here and watch the whole thing, but I've already done that 3 times. I told Pam I was spending way too much time on YouTube this week, because I was like, oh, that's so cool. But yeah, again, this just illustrates that point of how small of an opening and how determined. I mean, this little mouse is determined. Like, he doesn't necessarily need to go in there, but he's got food in there. He knows that there's food in there. So he's going to do everything he can to get into there. Okay, and now we've got, a little bit of a maze. And again, every time he goes out and goes back in, it's going to shut that maze up. Oh, and what you probably can't see is that there is a clear plexiglass on the top, so it can't just go out the top. It's got to go in the sideway. But yeah, look at that. Every time you see that little wall move just a little bit. Amazing how small of an area. So again, I'd love to watch the rest of this, but that's okay, because Pam will yell at me if I go over my time. Okay, so that's sanitation and exclusion. Let's hit one more thing, myth busting. Yeah, this comes in a lot with residential customers, but I get this quite a bit with commercial customers too. The last time I was in a facility, the office ladies were feeding the cats outside. Now, if you're feeding the cat, why is it going to go chase down a mouse? Cats are notoriously bad at catching mice and rats, especially rats, because rats are bigger. I mean, this is my cat. She's totally cute, but totally useless. Like, we have a mouse that comes in and she's like, oh, hey, how's it going? My food is over there. Don't touch it. So don't feed the cats on the outside of your facility. Don't think about letting the cats inside. Much better tools. Leave the predators on the outside that are outside. Do not feed them extra. If you have wild cats, great. I mean, let them go and do their thing. They'll take out a couple mice, but don't put the food out there for them, because then you're just delivering their pizza in instead of making them go out and catch their pizza. Another one that I see quite a bit, these sound things, these ultrasonic devices that are out there. I don't know how they can continue to sell these, because they do not work. I mean, there's been scientific proof that they do not work. The best ones that I've seen is, like, you have to get different ones for each pest. I mean, you want to talk about great marketing. You got to get this one for the rats, and this one for the mosquitoes, and this one for the cockroaches. I'm like, whoever branded this stuff is just genius. So these ultrasonic devices do not work. If they do work at all, it's very temporary. It's like, me listening to country music. I hate country music, but if there's a pizza in there, I'm going to deal with the country music and eat my pizza. So if you've seen this, as somebody is pitching you one of these, useless, absolutely useless. Do not do it. Mothballs. My point here is, do not bring anything in from home. Do not bring anything in from the store that you just saw a great advertisement in. Your pest control company needs to do their job with the tools that they have. And sometimes bringing in those products from home or doing something that you think is helpful is actually hurting the program and making it worse. So this is a big deal. Do not bring any pesticides from home. Do not bring any rodenticides. Mothballs is a big one. They're like, oh, we're just going to throw some mothballs up in our drop ceiling because we might have mice. And no, very bad idea. So you want to make sure that anything that you do use in your facility is part of your approved list. And again, for audits and everything like that, we don't want to mess with the auditors. There are a number of all natural products out there, and the research on these is not good for what research there is. There are a number of rodent repellent products out there. They've got like wintergreen oil and rosemary oil and orange oil and I don't know, oil of rodent, something like that. really not effective. Again, to go back to my thing about country music, how much I hate country music. You know, I'm trying to think of a food I hate. It's terrible. I can't think of a food I hate. You know, I hate the smell of anise. I hate the smell of licorice. But if there's chocolate chip cookies in there, I'm going to ignore the smell, jump over the anise, and go get my cookies. So these products can work for a day or two, but then the rodents figure it out, the smell dies down, and a lot of these products are very smelly. So if you're using these around food, that can be an issue. So if anybody pitches you these products of, oh, we have this great rodent repellent, there's no such thing as a rodent repellent right now. People are still pitching those ultrasonic devices. They're pitching these safe, and you notice that it says effective, natural, safe. That's a very dangerous word, because what is safe? Water is not safe. Water kills hundreds of people every year, but we drink it and it's out there. So be very careful about these. And again, this kind of comes down to the whole fact of don't bring anything from home. If you have questions on products, if you see something, I'm happy to tell you what it's all about and what I think of it. But really, if you're trying to deter rodents, your best bet is exclusion and sanitation, making that whole area as inhospitable, as open, as scary as it can be. Even lights. I mean, if you have some outside lights, I mean, be careful, because we don't want to attract insects in, but outside lights placed pretty carefully. That nighttime area then is bright, it's lit, predators could be there, they're going to avoid that. So you can actually use lights a little bit to deter them and push them away. But any of these all natural rodent repellents, don't bother. If they last a few days, and that's just not going to help. So with that, I've run through everything I can think of that I could possibly fit in this in about an hour. But from your point of view, again, especially if you've hired an external company, you still have a role to play. And all the people in your facility have a role to play with this, making sure those traps stay where they belong, make sure they're up against the wall, making sure those bait stations are doing their thing, making sure you're keeping an eye on the trash, you're keeping an eye on those holes. I mean, those holes, come on. Oh, I do have one more for you. Okay. These things are smart. They're crafty. They are sneaky. We've seen them evade the traps. Okay. So when they're there, you've got to use your eyes, and your eyes are great. I mean, you're going to have some people in your facility that might see it, especially if you're operating at night. Again, I will send you the link to this, because the music on this is absolutely hysterical. But you can see, okay, we've got a trap. We've got a nice snap trap. Again, I push it up against that wall. I don't like it there in the middle, but you know, the mouse has gotten there, and you know, there's a nice set of cheese, and oh, what just happened? Oh no, poor little mouse. We don't care. It's there. But these things can get out of traps. These things can evade you. And once they get out of that trap, they get smart as well. So determining whether you have rats or mice, determining if you have even adults and juveniles can be important. So with this, again, I will send you this, because the sound on this is just absolutely hysterical. Makes a lot more sense. But yeah, little guy doing bed presses with his trap. Okay. Yeah, you got to build those muscles so you can evade the next trap. Forgot I had this video in there. It's so great. All right. With that, enough fun, I guess. I don't know what I've got after that. I mean, how can I go any farther?
I was just thinking we really should have done some trigger warnings.
And I had some pictures and I purposely did not put them in. So
okay.
I mean, that was the worst. And come on, the little guy doing his bench presses. I'll send you all those links. They're a lot of fun to watch. And again, it just proves how crafty they are, how small of that opening they can get in, and that Legos are really cool and they can be scientific experiments.
Yes, they are.
All right, I'm gonna stop sharing here. And I totally didn't pay attention to questions and everything. So yeah.
Okay. Well, actually, you did answer one of mine.
Okay.
I had a question about the peppermint oil. You know, I've heard the peppermint oil, the lavender, the vinegar.
Nope.
So, you know, and food facilities, of course,
Mhm.
that's not so
And
much
those
a
are
good idea.
stinky. They're
Mm,
really smelly products. If you've ever,
mm,
and you don't, you're not supposed to use a lot of them, but I mean, how else are you supposed to deter the stuff? They smell. And again, we don't want those smells contaminating the foods that we have
yeah,
in these facilities. No.
yeah. Um, and one of the other things, oh, I should mention snap traps. We
Mhm.
don't normally recommend snap traps.
Yep.
I know that for some food safety programs like Canada Gap,
Mhm.
they are allowed, but they cannot be baited. So I just wanted to make sure that
Thank you.
everybody, yep.
Okay,
Um,
and we've got a couple questions here. So David,
awesome.
the Wi-Fi enabled shock traps. I really love the electronic monitoring. There's a lot of capabilities with it, and the best thing is so maybe you check those traps once a week. Maybe it's every 2 weeks that your pest control folks come in and check those. So you could have rodents running around for like 2 weeks potentially. So that system sends you a message immediately. So you can immediately go to that trap,
Mm,
figure out what's going on around it. Is there a broken door seal? Is there a sanitation issue? They are wonderful. But the point of those is just like the traps and the bait stations that are already there, you have to respond to it and you have to do that corrective action. If you just go and pull the mouse out and like, okay, see you later, you haven't done anything to solve the problem. And that aspect of solving that problem quickly often makes the cost worth it on these. Yep. And okay, Patricia, can these techniques apply to squirrels? Absolutely. Um, you know, they're a little bit different in the sense that you're going to have to look at the tree line. You don't want those trees touching the side of the building where they can climb up and potentially get on the roof. So you have to, for squirrels, you have to think up in 3 dimensions instead of just on ground level. But yeah, I have a problem with chipmunks, and I've used all of these techniques on my chipmunks to reduce that population so fewer of them are around. Yep. Okay.
So I've done a little bit of research on pests and such. Anyways, is it true that they eat like 15 to 25 times a day? So they're
Mice,
constant
yeah.
grazers?
Basically, yeah, they're nibblers. So they'll take a little bit over here and they'll go over here and take a little bit over here and over here and over here. Yeah, they'll never just sit there and be like, dude, I got some good stuff down here. Like the pizza rat there. That pizza rat is not going to eat that whole piece of pizza. He's going to take a little nibble, he's going to go away, do some other stuff, come back, take a little nibble. Yeah, they are very much those nibblers, those grazers. If they can only find one food source, they're going to keep coming back and forth to that food source.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And the heat treatment. You
Mm.
had mentioned a heat treatment. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that would involve?
So we were actually doing the heat treatment for insects.
Okay.
But when you think of it, I mean, you know, we couldn't stand in there for more than about 15 minutes. I mean, if we were in there for 2, 3, 4 hours, it would affect our system. So if you are doing heat treatments on your facility, it will absolutely knock down those rodent populations if they are inside, because they're probably more susceptible to the heat
Mm,
than even the insects are. But if you give them
okay.
a big opening to jump out of the building,
Yeah. Mm,
yeah, yep.
okay. Um, I think we're good.
Cool. Well, thank you everybody for being on. Again, if you have any more questions, feel free. I will, Pam's got all my information. I didn't actually put that on this slide. Wow. And I will give her all the links to those videos so you can see the full videos and have a little fun with that. So appreciate you all being here today.
Well, thank you very much, Shell. And I just wanted to mention the December 8th webinar. Shell is joining us again with regards to flies, small flies, large flies.
All kinds of flying
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, flies. Okay, well, with that, we will wrap up, and thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you all again.